Adam Cook. Now that is a legendary name in South African history, one that echoes through generations, especially for the Griqua people. But, behind every legend, there's a reality that's often way more fascinating. So in this explainer, we're going to strip away the myths to get to the real story, the truth about the man who started it all, Adam Cook I.
And it all really boils down to this one simple, but honestly kind of wild question. How does a guy's job, just being a cook, end up becoming the name of a whole dynasty? A dynasty that would go on to shape the entire frontier? Well, let me tell you, the real answer is so much more interesting than any legend you've heard. So, for the longest time, the story everyone knew was, well, it was pretty romantic. It was this tale of a young boy, supposedly named Adamita, who was orphaned when his parents died from smallpox. You know the type of story. He gets taken in, given a brand new life, and rises up to become this great leader. It's a really compelling story of resilience, for sure, but it's just not what actually happened.
Okay, so first things first. We have to separate the facts from all that fiction. Let's really dig into the historical records and see what they have to say.
Because when you look at the actual records, the verified documents from the Cape Colony, they paint a totally different picture. And honestly, it's way more remarkable. There is zero mention, none, of an Adam Ada in any of the official papers from that time.
And this is where it gets really clear, right? On one side, you've got the myth, this romantic orphan story. But on the other side, the historical record tells a much tougher and I think much more profound story. We're talking about a man born into slavery around 1710, known just as Adam. That's it. And the name that would define his entire legacy? It wasn't some gift from a guardian. He earned it. He earned it himself through his own skill.
So the big question is, how did he make that incredible leap? How do you go from that to leading a people? Let's trace his actual journey, from being a cook to becoming a chieftain. This right here is the real heart of his story. And it's really this simple. Cook is just the Dutch and Africans' word for cook. That's it. His skill in the kitchen was so exceptional that it literally became who he was. People didn't know him as Adam from somewhere. They knew him as Adam the Cook, Adam Cook. And check out this incredible life path. I mean, just look at it. He starts out as an enslaved person, literally property of the Dutch East India Company. But his talent as a cook gets him noticed. It makes him stand out. And that leads to this huge turning point. He's freed, or manumitted by his owner. Now, with that freedom, he could have just vanished into the background. But no, he builds a community. He becomes a leader. And he starts this incredibly powerful family line. What a story.
Yeah, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? His professional nickname, a word that described his job while he was enslaved, gets transformed into his actual surname the moment he's free. He basically took that name, made it his own, and turned a simple label into a lasting legacy.
Okay, but Adam Cook's story didn't just happen in a vacuum, right? To really get why his rise was so significant, we have to understand the world he was living in. And on that really complex 18th century frontier, there was another power rising right alongside him, and they were called the Windvogels. So who were these other major players on the scene? Who was sharing this landscape with him? Because if you want to truly understand Adam Cook, you absolutely have to understand the people around him. So let's talk about the Windvogels. These guys weren't just some neighbors down the road. They were a seriously powerful clan in their own right. And just like the Khoiks, they were a mixed-race group that was emerging as a real political and social force on the northern frontier of the Cape Colony.
And right there, that sets the stage for this really fascinating dynamic. The relationship between the Khoiks and the Windvogels was, well, it wasn't simple. It was this complex dance of alliance and rivalry that ended up shaping the entire region. This map is great because it gives us a perfect visual of the whole situation. See? You can see the Khoiks' territory right here and then the Windvogels' land just to the north and east. But look at that zone right in the middle, that core area of competition. This wasn't just some empty patch of dirt. It was the resource-rich heart of the whole region, and it was pretty much inevitable that their worlds were going to collide right there.
So what were they fighting over? Well, basically the absolute essentials for life and power on the frontier. Both clans needed the best grazing land and water for their cattle. They both wanted control of the really valuable hunting grounds for things like ivory and ostrich feathers. And, maybe most important of all, they were both trying to dominate the trade routes that led back to the Cape Colony. Because that's where you got guns, ammunition, and political clout.
But here's the thing. Their relationship was never static.
It was constantly changing, ebbing and flowing with the pressures of the time. So around 1760, you see Adam Koch getting official recognition with a land grant from the government. But then, just 8 years later, in 1768, we see Adam Koch and Klaus Windvogel, the leader of the Windvogels, teaming up. They joined forces for a military mission against a common enemy. But that teamwork didn't just erase the competition between them. If anything, it only got more intense after that.
And this little table here just breaks down that complicated dynamic perfectly. When they were faced with a common threat, like raids from Sin hunter-gatherer groups, they'd form an alliance. They had to, right? But the second it came to resources, or trying to get political favor from the Cape, they were bitter rivals. It's just a classic frontier situation. Your ally today could easily be your competitor tomorrow. So here's the real takeaway. The history of the Griqua people and of that whole 18th century frontier, it isn't just the story of one single heroic guy. It was a much more complex world, shaped by the constant, complicated back and forth between powerful groups like the Cooks and the Windvogels. If you forget about the Windvogels, you're really only getting half the story.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We started this whole thing by taking apart a legend and finding the real story in a man's job. And we ended up uncovering this forgotten rivalry that basically defined an entire region. It really makes you wonder, how many other histories out there have been shaped not by these big romantic legends, but by the forgotten truths of everyday life? Things like daily struggles, professional skills, and these complex, messy rivalries. Makes you think.